Hey there, and welcome to this week's newsletter, where I'm unpacking the difference between what does good look like as a question that we hold, and what does good enough look like? And how can we use both these questions in service of leading ourselves, others, and the systems that we live and work in a way that means we are exceptional in the outcomes we achieve? What is the difference between what does good look like and what does good enough look like? And this question around what does good look like is really, I believe, around us having an orientation towards which we are moving. There's a beautiful quote, I think it's Seneca, one of the Stoic kind of philosophers, around no wind is favourable unless we know to which port we are sailing. And so it's this idea of what's our directionality? How do we know if we are moving towards or away from what we want more of or what we want less of? Because what we want less of is something we want to move away from, right? Whereas what we want more of might be something we want to move towards. And there's a beautiful framework called the choice points framework, which can be useful in kind of unpacking what does good look like, because it asks us to think about what's valuable to us, what has priority in terms of our time, our attention, our effort, our emotions. Where do we want to invest? And that's a kind of a whole of life question. But equally, for a team, it can be, what does good look like for us in this meeting? In a conversation, it can be, what does good look like for us to have resolved or to have come to next steps on in the next 20 minutes? As I coach senior executives, because things change so quickly in your worlds, each session I'll kick off with, okay, so we've had those email exchanges, but right now, what does good look like for the next hour that we have together? And something may have happened just that morning that means that is what we need to take a deep dive on, because there's no point us trying to focus on what we emailed about, because this has kind of taken over the whole scenario. So does that make sense in terms of what does good look like? I feel like that's about us setting an orientation, a directionality, but not in some fuzzy way. It's actually saying this is where we are heading towards. This is the port we are sailing towards. And then what does good enough looks like is about how we get there may not be in the way that we think we're going to as we leave port now. Right? So what is good enough? Good enough is going, okay, that's good enough now for us to make progress. It doesn't need to be perfect. I don't need to have all the answers, but it's good enough to take the next step and the next step. And it allows us to get out of perfectionism and get out of procrastination, right? And it's like, it doesn't need to have all of the answer all of the time, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Is it enough that moves us in the directionality of what we've defined good is? So that's just a kind of an opening framing for the distinction between what does good look like and spending time and effort thinking about that, and then working with a good enough principle to make progress towards it. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this week's newsletter and that you found something useful in us unpacking the difference between what does good look like and what does good enough look like. See you next time.